Okay, it's
Okay.
recording.
Yay.
Oh my god. Babe, JSF is talking to me.
Oh,
This is like the highest honor a
I'm
lore
sure
hunter can
everyone's
have.
forgotten who I am.
He's
I
still
have not done
alive.
anything for like a year.
Yeah, I basically feel like Gertrude. I'm talking to divine messengers here.
Oh,
Yeah.
um,
Okay. You should see my boyfriend's face. He's like, what have I done? Why did I ever
oh
get her
dear.
bloodborne? Yeah. So, talk to me about Lothric. What's Lothric?
Lothric is it's the land that Dark Souls 3 takes place in, and it's also the name of the royal family.
There's also the castle, right? That's a Lothric.
Yeah, that's I think it's like what's it called? The Liechtenstein, the country. Well, like the country is named after the royal family.
So wait, all of the Dark Souls takes place in Lothric?
The Dark Souls 3 takes place in Lothric because it says in the beginning that like something has happened and like all of these disparate kingdoms have kind of like
Oh, right, right.
drifted toward Lothric and they're like yeah. So like Lothric is the name of the land, but all these other kingdoms are kind of connected to it through some kind of spatial warping.
Okay, cool. So Lothric has this royal family, right?
Yep.
And one of the people is the queen, right?
Yeah.
So, um, so there are like a few things that we know for sure about the Queen of Lothric. Like she was married to King Oceiros.
Yep.
After giving birth to Ocelotte, her youngest, she
Yep.
disappears. She may have had a daughter named Gertrude, and I do have a question about that. Is Gertrude really her daughter? Because sometimes she's referred to as the daughter of the queen, but sometimes she's referred to as the Holy Maiden or the Queen's Maiden.
Yeah. I don't know for sure, but I think that's a translation thing because the same thing happens with Ebritas in Bloodborne, where half of the references to Ebritas say she's daughter of the cosmos, but then there's that other reference to her on the Rosmarinus that calls her the Fair Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they're translated from the same word that can mean both those things. So it might be. I'm pretty sure she is the Queen's child because there's no talk of there being another queen. There's the Oceiros and then the queen, and then their children are Lorien, Lothric, and Gertrude.
Could she by any chance be Guinevere's child?
Oh God. Okay. Here's the thing. Um, the there is a school of thought that says the Queen of Lothric is Guinevere because the divine blessing describes the Queen of Lothric with the same description that they give to Guinevere in Dark Souls 1. But and then it also says that Guinevere left Anor Londo and she had many children, which fits with the queen. I think it's probably more likely that the queen is one of Guinevere's own children, like a daughter or a niece or even a grandchild or something, because you also have there's the dancer of the Boreal Valley, and her soul is made into one of Guinevere's miracles. And then you have Rosaria, and her soul is made into one of Guinevere's miracles. So it's like they like remember when Dark Souls 3 first came out, there was that theory that Rosaria was Guinevere because of the soul transposition thing. So like I think what it's getting at there is that the dancer and Rosaria are like Guinevere's some kind of relation of Guinevere. And that's why you can get her miracles from their souls. And the Queen of Lothric, who apparently never actually shows up in the game, is presumably like kind of the same thing. I think that's what they're getting at.
So they could all be like related to the old gods, basically.
That seems to be what they're getting at. That like everyone from Irithyll is a descendant. Well, everyone from like the royal family of Irithyll is like a descendant of Gwyn and Gwyn's bloodline. That's so, like
Mm-hmm.
the dancer, Rosaria, Yorshka, Gwendolyn. Who else is there? I don't know. I think that's it.
Eleanor, but she's not there.
Yeah,
She's
Philly. Oh, she's on an Irithyll. Yeah,
she's just
yeah, and you,
sleeping.
yeah, yeah. So that's. I think the idea is that the I think the idea is that the Queen of Lothric is descended from the bloodline of the old gods and Gwyn, and she leaves and goes. She's like Guinevere's daughter or granddaughter or niece or whatever, and she leaves and she goes to Lothric and she marries into that bloodline because it's kind of implied that like there's all this talk about the Lothric bloodline being special and it's really heavily associated with linking the fire in a way that other bloodlines aren't. And I think that's because like they are the last descendants of the old royalty, and it looks like if you kind of like Dark Souls 3 is kind of a mess, but if you squint a bit, it looks like the idea is that the Nameless King might have been the founder of Lothric, and it's the descendants of the Nameless King that are in Lothric right now.
I see. And you said that the Queen of Lothric left, and then so she left Anor Londo and then went to Lothric, and then Lothric rolled back to Anor Londo.
I think it's like other things roll back to Lothric.
Okay.
That seems that's the way it's described in the intro. Is like it's like this is where the I remember the exact wording. It's like the transitory lands of the Lords of Cinder converge. So they're all like Lothric is like everything's going around like a plug hole, and Lothric's the plug hole. So everything's just kind of stuck to it. Presumably that's why, like, if you look over into the distance, there's nothing. There's not a world outside Lothric. It's just like the Dreg Heap.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I want to ask you about the Lothric princes. Are they, like the older and the younger prince, are they kids of the Queen of Lothric?
They'd have to be, I think, because we don't really find out. Well, that's the simplest explanation, and there's no like other character who could be the mother, and there's no hints at it. So like I think that's the simplest way of looking at it.
Okay, and Ocelotte is said to be the queen's child. What's up with that baby? Like, do we meet them? Are they killed during the boss fight?
Okay, Ocelotte exists in the game. There is a model for Ocelotte and a texture for Ocelotte. And what happens is for censorship reasons, the game never loads the Ocelotte model. So it's just the reason Ocelotte's invisible is because presumably that boss fight and those animations were designed with the idea that Ocelotte's actually there. And then at kind of the 11th hour, they removed that model because I guess they didn't want to have to deal with a baby being killed on screen. Oh. So it's like, I think Ocelotte is it's like Murgo in Bloodborne, where like, I'm pretty sure there is supposed to be a child in that boss fight and you just never see them. Because they didn't want to have to deal with the censorship issues around violence against small children. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but as far as what we're shown on screen, it's like either Ocelotte is invisible or Oceiros is just completely insane and thinks Ocelotte is there, but he's not.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think of the idea of Ocelotte being the young Prince Lothric?
Well, the weird thing is, like, he says, like, you're a child of dragons, which doesn't really fit with Lothric as he's shown. Like, there's nothing... If you look at someone like Yorshka, or Filianor, or the Painter, they have, like, scales around their faces, and they look draconic, and they have tails. Mm-hmm. Oh, Filianor doesn't have a tail, but the Yorshka does. And it's weird talking about... Do we want to talk about Dark Souls 2 for a second?
Sure. Okay, yeah, let's go.
Dark Souls 2 has the Emerald Herald in it, right? You haven't played very far into Dark Souls 2, have you?
Like over halfway or so, but I know some stuff that happened.
Yeah, so like the Emerald Herald in Dark Souls, which again is a game that suffers from having stuff hacked out of it. The Emerald Herald in Dark Souls 2 is a child of dragons as well. Mm-hmm. She's like created somehow from the essence or the soul or whatever of a dragon. And it's never really explained what the point of her is, but they talk about her being the thing that's going to break the cycle of light and dark. And Ocelotte seems to be heading in the same kind of direction because Ocelotte is also a child of dragons, and Oceiros is constantly talking about, like, oh, you don't understand the power of Ocelotte, you're all jealous of him, as though he's the MacGuffin in some big plan. And the other thing is that the Emerald Herald, her full name is Shanalot, which is close to Ocelotte.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Ocelotte seems to be a similar kind of deal, but we find out even less about him than we do about Shanalot. So it's not really clear what's exactly going on.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier that Yorshka, being like dragon-like. Couldn't Yorshka be Ocelot somehow?
Well, because like that is possible, I guess. Like Oceiros does say like he uses male pronouns for Ocelot, but that could go either way, I guess. Like the other thing is like he does seem to think Ocelot is still. I'm trying to think about how this would work because like the queen disappears like shortly after Ocelot's born.
Yeah.
So like that would mean if Yorshka's Ocelot, then like that would have to have been. She would have to have disappeared like 20 years ago. About.
Well, keep in mind, time is convoluted, so.
Oh god, it really is.
Cool. Okay, so let me ask you, why, like, there's Rosaria, there's Guinevere, there's the dancer, there's also Nashandra, and why can't, like, the Queen of Lothric be one of them? Like, why couldn't she be Rosaria or Nashandra or...
Well, the thing, she could.
Oh.
But, like, there's no, like, we don't find out any information about her, so she's just, like, this void that could be anything. Mm-hmm. She's like a insert character here thing.
Insert character here.
Here's the thing, right? In Dark Souls 1, it's a similar kind of story with Guinevere, where you find out that Guinevere disappeared. She left Anor Londo, and like you never actually meet her, you just meet an illusion. Mm-hmm. But in that, people generally aren't that annoyed or frustrated with that part of the story because it's like it's the end of a story. The story is like you keep getting told, go to Anor Londo and meet Guinevere and get the Lord Vessel, and everything will go according to this prophecy. So you go there and you grab the Lord Vessel from Guinevere, but it turns out that actually Guinevere has left, all the gods have left, and the gods have basically abandoned you, and this is not going to go, as well as you think it is, as well as you're told. And basically it's a way of saying, you have been abandoned by the gods that you thought you were serving. So it's like the end of that story. Mm-hmm. The thing about the Queen of Lothric is you just get told she's gone. Yeah. And it doesn't go anywhere. And it's not connected to anything. And it's just like, it feels like the beginning of a story that's never finished. And I think that's why people are still kind of annoyed by it, because it's a similar plot device, but it's used in the service of a story that doesn't really go anywhere.
Do you have any theories as to like why she disappeared exactly and where she went?
Well, it says you find the hidden blessings in Untended Graves. Mm-hmm. And it says that like that's Untended Graves is where the Queen of Lothric would go to the Queen of Lothric alone cared to wish the poor souls good fortune in the Untended Graves. Mm-hmm. So presumably she went there. That's where she disappeared, because that's like, I guess, her last known whereabouts if you find a hidden blessing there. The problem is, and like you could kind of connect that to Oceiros, because the back of Oceiros's room is how you get to Untended Graves. Yeah. So she could have, like, after Ocelotte was born, like gone out that secret door, and that was the last time she was seen.
So basically, she's like, "Oh, there's a secret door in my husband's creepy basement. Let me go explore it. Oh, such fun! This is worse than the Viola story."
Well, it's possible that she knew about it all along, and she's escaping.
Okay.
That, like, after she realizes that Oceiros has gone mad and he's like turning into a dragon, she decides to run off. The problem is that Untended Graves is a dead end.
She runs off and leaves her children with the crazy dragon.
It's not a great story. The problem is that Untended Graves is a dead end. So I don't know where she's gone. And the only, like, unless she's the handmaiden in the shrine, there's no one she could be.
Oh. What?
So, like, okay, once you go into the Untended Graves, the only women are the handmaid of the shrine.
Yeah.
And potentially the dead firekeeper you find the eyes on. So either it's never explained anywhere, or she is one of those, and I don't really think she's either, because
well, clearly
because the
she's
handmaid,
a Corvian.
yeah, maybe, because like the handmaid is the handmaid's also in our version of the world, so it's probably not her.
Yeah.
Like you could really stretch it and say that she might have been the firekeeper, but I don't know.
No,
Like
no,
it's
she's gone, dear. That explains everything.
Of course.
Yes, time is convoluted. Oh man.
It's one of the many Dark Souls 3 stories that starts and then they're like, no, you want to hear this one instead.
Yeah. Let me ask you, you know how there's a room with a painting of Guinevere? And then...
yeah, in Erythil.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's like a painting of Nishandra. And then, like, I think you find, if I'm not mistaken, either... I think you find Divine Blessing on
there's a Divine
knight.
Blessing on the knight looking at the painting of Guinevere. And I think there's a Divine Blessing, like, in a chest just beforehand as well.
So what does all this mean? What is this rune trying to tell us?
Well, it's like, it's hard to tell exactly why, but it's like, it's kind of linking the two games together, because you've got Guinevere, which is signaling like this is kind of hinting that you're kind of going back to Anor Londo, because you see the Silver Knights and the Divine Blessing as the picture, and it's not the exact same image you find in Dark Souls. It's like it's decayed and it's very old. So it's kind of like signaling this area is Anor Londo, but it's the rotted kind of ruined version, not as you remember it. And then the other artwork is from Dark Souls 2. And I don't quite understand why it's there. I think it's just there to basically say Dark Souls 2 is still canon. Because it's like, it's from memory, it's like it's Nishandra, the Iron King's throne, and I think it's a painting of Eliam Lois from Dark Souls 2. So it's like,
So
I thought maybe like Sullivan was like stealing the artwork of Anor Londo or something. I don't know.
Sticky little fingers guy.
Because the other thing is like the way it's explained, but it doesn't really articulate in terms of gameplay, is that the Silver Knights are fighting against Sullivan's forces. So this little area here might be like the last of the Silver Knights kind of took the valuables of Anor Londo and hid them away here, and they're guarding them.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is that, like, you're told that there's... Because you find, like, the Silver Knights are still serving Gwendolyn, and you find, like, corpses inside the cathedral that have the ears on them, which are presumably is to indicate those are Silver Knight corpses. But you can't get the Silver Knights to actually fight Sullivan's forces, so I don't quite get how it's a bit like how the design of Lothric says that the Winged Knights with the big axes are fighting against the Lothric Knights, but then if you actually put them in the same place, they won't fight each other.
So like top 10 anime betrayals, huh?
Basically, yeah. Or like the giants in the run up to Aldrich, where like it looks like the giants died fighting the Aldrich faithful, and like if you wake the giants up and run away, the giants will go and face the Aldrich faithful kind of like they're fighting, but they won't actually do it.
Maybe they're just like throwing out sick burns at them. We just don't hear it. So a bit of an unrelated question, but it's about Gertrude, so it's kind of related, I guess. Gertrude is connected to the divine messengers, and
oh god.
But you know,
this is like unresolved plotline 18.
But an angel revealed a tale to her.
It sure did.
Which angel?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Because prior to the Ringed City, we assumed the angels meant like the traditional kind of Christian imagery of the angel. Because there is that huge painting in the run-up to the Grand Archives of what looks like one of the Winged Knights, but there's like a more regal version, and they don't have shoes on, and they've got this huge robe, and he's like descending from the sky, in this beam of light, and he's descending in front of the eclipse that happens.
Okay.
Like he's descending in front of that dark sign. So we're like, okay, that's the angels that Gertrude saw, and they're going to descend in front of the dark sign. Then the Ringed City happened, and apparently the angels are the pilgrims who turn into giant locusts.
Right.
And like, okay, but that makes the painting completely bizarre. Like, I don't quite get what they were going for. But like, if she, the confusing part is that it's not you can say, okay, a big locust angel revealed a tale to Gertrude. That's fine. The problem is that like, you're told also that what it revealed to her was so dangerous and so heretical. That's why Gertrude's locked up in the archives, and she's declared a heretic, and I think she's starved to death or something in a cage. Mm-hmm. So what the angel told her is supposed to be dangerous, but then looking at the angels as they're shown to us, all it looks like they could reasonably have told her is go to the Ringed City. Like, it's weird because you can say, okay, you're kind of going somewhere with that, because if you go to the Ringed City, you could wake up Filianor, which would end the Age of Fire. So maybe it was that. Mm-hmm. The problem is that Lorien and Lothric also kind of want the Age of Fire to end. And they're in the throne room and everyone is defending them.
Right. Poor Gertrude.
Because like the whole thing about like, and Emma says this as well before she dies, like the whole of Lothric, they appear to actually disagree with what Prince Lothric is doing. Like, they want him to link the fire, but they're bound to always serve him. Yeah. So all they can do is defend him and hope he changes his mind, because that's what Emma's basically doing. Mm-hmm. So it's weird that like Lorien and Lothric not linking the fire, which is like would end the world, is that's fine because they're members of the royal family, but then Gertrude, who I guess appears to be suggesting something similar, is locked up and killed for it. Like, I really don't understand it at all. I don't think it makes sense.
Maybe they just didn't like her.
It's possible.
We're gonna look you up. Yeah. Well, speaking of the twin princes, it's something I wanted to ask you also. The soul of the twin princes says that the two princes rejected their duty to become lords of Cinder and settled down far, far away to watch the fire fade from a distance. But like, don't we find them in the Lothric castle?
I think that's maybe what they mean by far, far away. Like, I don't know. It may have meant something else and they translated it as far, far away. It may mean like somewhere that's hard to get to. I don't know. Because they're barricaded and like you can't easily get to them. Like, they're barricaded away.
No, but it does sound like they moved from like their parents' castle's basement to the top floor. Yeah, I guess. Well, that is what they did. Like, they don't appear to have moved at any point. Like, they're there the whole game. You just can't get to them. Mm-hmm. And like other people have gotten there because like Lothric says like and another dogged contender has arrived. Like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, someone asked me, and I'm gonna ask you: Is the Queen of Lothric connected to Ludleth?
I have absolutely no idea, because Ludleth is another one of those like you're going somewhere with this, but then it just kind of ends unresolved. Like there's a thing in the Souls games where there's a lot of ambiguity and there's a lot of things that aren't entirely explained. Mm-hmm. But then there's Dark Souls 3 where like there's also things that aren't explained, but they're like, it's like I was saying about the Queen of Lothric versus Guinevere. It's like this is a story that starts and then it doesn't go anywhere. It's not like it ends on an ambiguous note or it's unsure about the implications or something, or you're not quite sure, if it was a good thing or a bad thing. This is just like Ludleth throws himself in the fire to keep. I think the idea they seem to be getting at is that Lorien and Lothric refuse to link the fire. The fire starts fading. They can't throw a Lord of Cinder on it to keep it going. So Ludleth, who is just some guy, he becomes like a Lord of Cinder, kind of like placebo. Like, we'll just throw this guy on there, and he keeps it. He burns just enough to kind of keep things together, but he's like almost obliterated by it. Like the bottom half of his body's missing, and he's all shriveled.
Mm-hmm. On an unrelated note, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you think he's a pygmy?
No.
Okay.
Because he's called Ludleth of Courland.
Do you think the Ringed City is Courland?
No. Because he's like, in my home... Doesn't he say, like he talks about his life in Courland at one point? He's like, in Courland, I was a sorcerer and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Yeah. I'd have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure, like, the number of bodies found in the Ringed City matches the number of thrones. Like, there's not a missing pygmy.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because there are dead pygmies all over Gale's arena. And I think if you count... I'm pretty sure, like, those ones plus the guy you meet before the arrow ghosts is 8. But yeah. I can't remember exactly.
That's a good point. I should... I'll go check after this is done. I'll go check.
Haven't you not beaten Gale yet?
No, when I saw Gale, he's like, "Oh no, I'm out. I surrender." Because like,
oh, of course, yeah.
I even had a different ending from everyone else. Because
that's true.
I'm like
he just knew it was no point.
Yeah, he handed me the Dark Soul. It was like
he committed to the Doku and gave you the Dark.
Exactly. And then I married the Queen of Wildbloods.
Good.
That's how my ending went.
Oh.
But that's a story for another time.
Oh.
Okay, so you know the like Marty and a few other people sent me a picture of the statue that I showed to you yesterday.
Yeah, it was in your Discord.
Yeah.
Well, the statue that we're talking about is a statue in Irithyll, and it's the area near the kind of octagonal lift that you have to unlock, and it's after the run up with all the dogs in it, and the invisible kind of sniper ghost things. And you showed it to me and said, "Do you think that's Guinevere?" And I said, like, it's a woman and she's cradling something, but it's not there. She's just doing a cradling motion. Mm-hmm. And I said that it just looks like someone who works at From has this obsession with the Pieta, and they keep doing it in everything. Like, it's all over Bloodborne, and it's never actually holding anyone. It's just doing the Pieta pose with nothing in it. So I just ran past it, assuming it was that. But then, who was it in the Discord that...
I think it was Mittens or Marty.
Someone in your Discord showed that, like, no, that statue is wearing the exact same... Like, ribbon. Guinevere has this very it's like a ribbon attached to a bracelet that's very distinct looking. Like, it's not... If it was just a ribbon, you could say, okay, it's a ribbon, but it's attached to this bracelet with this very distinct pattern on it.
Yeah.
So it does look like either it's supposed... It doesn't look like Guinevere is the thing. Mm-hmm. But it could be like maybe people who are related to Guinevere like wore the same kind of bracelet. Oh. So it does look like there's an intentional connection there, but it doesn't look like Guinevere is the thing. Like, and I remember there was in Dark Souls 1, one of the theories was Guinevere didn't even look like that because she's an illusion created by Gwendolyn. So she could have looked like anything, and he was just making her look like that. But then there's all the statues around also look like the illusion, so I think she probably did look like that. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, she's a character we never meet in person. We only ever see her depicted.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Cool. Another thing I wanted to ask you was about the Ashen Estus ring. It said that it's a ring crafted from shards. Once a treasure brought before Lothric's queen, she had it enshrined in the cemetery of Untended graves, so that one day an unkindled might profit from its use. So, like, how?
I guess because it's the same. Like, it restores FP, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Ashen
but
Estus.
Like, how did she know one day an unkindled might profit from its use?
I guess because like the way that it's presented is like this unkindled thing's been going on for a while. Like this is it's like when you go to Firelink Shrine, there's that tower that's just a mass Firekeeper grave, and it's like hundreds and hundreds of dead Firekeepers in there.
Are
so
you
presumably,
sure?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm the chosen one. Mine kindled is special, Richard.
Well, they are special, but prior to us, there were a number of failures, and those are like so. Like this has happened so many times that like presumably they knew that at some point there's going to be another unkindled found in the cemetery.
I see. Well, that makes.
But it's weird because it's in the Untended graves, which isn't where we wake up.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what? What is that?
And it's in our coffin, but it's found in our coffin, but there's already a body in it, which isn't us unless it is. Because Untended graves' relationship to time is a mess. Because like I remember when it came out, people were saying, "Oh, it's the past," and other people were saying, "No, it's the future." And like if you tally up like things that say it's the past and things that say it's the future, it's both. Like it's not either. So I think you have to just be like, this is like sideways in time. This is like a parallel universe where it's like when like how you go into other people's worlds.
Yeah.
When you're summoned, that it's like this is just someone else's world. Okay. And it's not the past or the future, it's just like we're somehow able to affect it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess, yeah.
And for some reason, Gwyn's knights are there. I don't know.
Because
like Ludleth talks about it like it's the past, because he talks about things that already happened there. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, it's like you can do stuff in your game
that will appear there. Yeah.
That will affect which suggests no, this is the future. Mm-hmm. But I think you just have to say it's like just like a parallel world. It's not the past or the future. And it does look like Untended Graves is what happened when like the fire wasn't linked properly, and then Ludleth linked it, and that's what created the world that we're in now.
Oh, that is so deep, bro.
Well, there's Casetive wrote an essay, and I don't have. I'll give you the URL when I remember what it is. But she wrote a very, very long essay on the kind of logistics of Untended Graves and what she thinks it is.
Oh, cool! I'll link it in the description.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very important question.
Yep.
Which one of my lore videos is your favorite?
I think the Guess Who I Am ones.
Yay! Okay.
Yay.
Yay. Right answer.
That was the. I remember you linked me your entire channel like 4 months ago, and I was like watching them kind of at random.
And you were like, "What is she on? What kind of crap is she taking?"
Yeah, those were the ones where I'm like, okay, yeah, I will reply to this person more often. they were so weird.
Oh man. I think this is about it. I think. Do you have anything, like any reveals about the Queen of Lothric that the world should be aware of?
Do you want to talk about how Oceiros very clearly belongs in Erythil?
Oh my god, I thought you'd never ask. Please, go ahead.
Well, one of the things we've been talking about is how, like, a lot of Dark Souls 3 seems to have been, at the last minute, they sort of shuffled everything. So, like, Oceiros looks like Seath, and he's got Seath's magic from Dark Souls 1, and he's got the Moonlight Greatsword. Mm-hmm. So everything, and like, one of the things in Dark Souls 3 is that it has this opposition between Lothric as the sun, where the warriors of sunlight are, and it's like up really high, and there's statues of the Nameless King. There's the sunlight altar, and then you have Erythil is the moon, because it's always dark there, and it's there's all that stuff about the moon always. The moon's always in Erythil. There's some poem about like the moon always waits for you in Erythil, and there's also within the Dark Souls world in general, there's the same opposition between the sun is miracles. It's where it's the gods, it's the sunlight spear. It's like sunlight is what's healing you. And then the moon is magic, and it's that's the Seath stuff, and sorcery is all governed by the moon. And that's why Gwendolyn ends up being raised as a girl, because when he's born, he's very strong with the moon instead of the sun, which they're not expecting, so he's raised differently. So, like, the thing about Irithyll is it's got all those, they call the wretches, those, like, dragon golem things that are chained up.
Mm-hmm.
And they look like attempts to, like, make a human-dragon hybrid. And they also, interestingly, look like babies, a bit.
Yeah.
Which matches, like, Ocelotte, whatever the fuck's going on there. And then, and also, like, if you look in their cells, like, they all the stuff in there is, like, sorcery stuff. So it's like, these are sorcerers who either they did it deliberately or it was done to them, tried turning into dragons. And Oceiros looks like if there was a successful, like, transformation, you would have Oceiros.
Right.
This, like, successful human dragon thing. But the problem is he is, for some reason, in Lothric. And they come up with this story that's like he used the Grand Archives of Lothric and that turned him into a dragon. And it just seems like that's a really desperate sort of like we've got to explain why this thing is here. Oh, that's the king and he turned into a dragon, which is really strange. And I'm pretty sure that whatever Oceiros was originally designed as, that was something you were going to find in Irithyll.
Mm-hmm.
And you were going to,
And
something else was going to be waiting for you in the Consumed King's Garden.
Like Gundyr?
I think it was probably Gundyr. Here's what I think was supposed to happen. We've completely left reality now. This is just like, I squinted at what was in the game and like looked at some concept art, and I'm like, okay, I think this is what was going to happen was. Gundyr, the version we fight at Untended Graves, was going to be in Oceiros' room, because there are pictures of that. If you look at the description of Gundyr's armor, it's like he's wearing this, and it's an imitation of armor that was worn by an old king of Lothric. And also, it looks like the armor that's worn by old King Doran in Demon Souls, and he is like the first king of Boletaria. I don't know if he's the first king. He's like an ancient king of Boletaria, and you have to like best him in combat to like discover the secret of Boletaria, which is this sword. So, I think originally the plan was, and here's the other really important thing is that the Consumed King's Garden, the assets that make that up are the same assets as Archdragon Peak.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nameless King is the guy that the Warriors of Sunlight worship, and Lothric is really into worshipping the sun, and they're like the Lothric Knights are Warriors of Sunlight, and there's talk of them like taming dragons, and they would use these urns of lightning as a weapon to kind of mimic the sunlight spears of Gwyn. There's a cut item that's like a key, and it says this is the key to the Great Bridge. And the Great Bridge wasn't made by humans, and once you reach the end of the Great Bridge, there's a secret that's like from ancient times there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the way Archdragon Peak is designed, it is literally a gigantic bridge. Like the area where you fight the Nameless King, he's fought on those clouds, but the area beneath you, literally that is a huge bridge. And it's never really used. Like you run around it, but you don't cross it until after you've beaten the Nameless King, at which point it's like a redundant space anyway, because there's really nothing there apart from some treasure. So I think the idea was that you would beat Gundyr or whoever. You would have this key that then unlocked the back of the throne room, and rather than leading... Oh, and the snake people from Archdragon Peak are there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like dragon scales and stuff. So I think what would happen is that key would unlock the door that currently leads to Untended Graves. And then you would pop out the back, and that would be Archdragon Peak, which would be physically connected to the rest of Lothric. and that's how you would access it rather than the meditation thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think was originally going on at one point, and then they scrapped it. And
Why?
that's why it could be anything. Like, I also suspect that, like, the fire was going to fade at the end. And that's what Untended Graves is. That Untended Graves is like I suspect what was going to happen, given Miyazaki's obsession with Berserk, is that okay, so I'll recap a significant event in Berserk for people who don't know it. Okay, there's a character called Griffith who looks a lot like Lothric, although he's not. Oh, no, actually, he is. By the time he's a character, he's a warrior, and he ends up crippled, and he can't walk and he can't talk. So It's kind of like the Twin Princes, and he basically sells out the world to create this eclipse, kind of like the Pale Blood Sky in Bloodborne, and the eclipse we get in Dark Souls 3. This eclipse happens, and then like basically the world after that point is completely fucked. And he's kind of like let the sort of supernatural outside worlds broken through, and now there's like ogres and monsters all over the world. Mm-hmm. And he sacrifices. He's the leader of a band of knights, and he basically sacrifices them all to complete this ritual under an eclipse to gain ultimate power. So I think what happens is, Lorien and Lothric are maybe a riff on that originally, and the idea is that Lothric would allow the eclipse thing to happen, because there's the problem with the eclipse in Dark Souls 3 is it happens and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember the first time it happened, and I come out after fighting the dancer, and I'm walking up the top of Lothric, and suddenly there is this massive eclipse. It's like this bleeding wound in the sky, and there's all those the butterflies flying off, and it's like, oh my god, like, okay, things are getting really bad now. What's going to happen next? And the answer is nothing. The answer is nothing happens. You just kill Lorien and Lothric and link the fire, and it's like, stay tuned for Dark Souls 4. Like, it hints at something really significant that doesn't ever follow through on it. So I think at some point maybe they were going to follow through on that, and like, even if you beat Lorien and Lothric, it's too late, and the fire is actually faded. And that's what Untended Graves was. And it's like, you end up back at Filing Shrine, but it's completely dark because the fire has gone out. And maybe that was like what they were going, and maybe after that you do something else. But like, I get the feeling that maybe like the back of Oceiros' room was going to lead to Archdragon Peak, and then Untended Graves is some other, like, I don't know, bad future or something you could get at the end of the game. And then they made Archdragon Peak somewhere you meditated to, and then... But I don't know, like, it's a very confused game.
So DS3 lore is totally cactus?
The thing is, like I was talking to Redgrave about this the other day, because all the Bloodborne cut stuff that's leaking. Uh-huh. Where it's like, if you assume that part of the story doesn't make sense because the people making the game ran out of time, then you've kind of crossed a line where you're admitting that, like, okay, the authorship of this thing matters. Like, this can't be reconciled with what we're given. We have to invoke, the author did something. Mm-hmm. They ran out of time. They ran out of money. That's why it doesn't make sense. It's not that there's something in the world that can explain it that we haven't got to. It's like, they were out of time.
Yeah.
So once you've done that, I think, like, once you're there, you might as well just run with it and go, okay, well, what's left over that we can use to try to figure out what they might have been doing before that happened?
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people, like, don't think is... They say, like, if it's... Once something's not in the finished product, it no longer counts. And I'm like, I'm like, well, okay, it may not count, but it can help you figure out, like, what they were maybe getting at before they ran out of time.
Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, so basically you'd go to Archdragon Peak and you'd meet the Nameless King, and the big reveal is that he's like the real King of Lothric. And
I think that's the idea that like the Nameless King, because the altar of sunlight is a statue of the Nameless King, and the game goes into so much like wanking on about how like the Knights of Lothric, they used to tame dragons and they like fought alongside dragons and they all had lightning, and you know the knights will have like they'll drop sunlight medals. They're all warriors of sunlight, so it's like it's really playing this angle up. And then it's like it goes nowhere. It's just played up, and then it's like this looks really significant, and then it's like no, well, it goes nowhere. So like if you imagine like there would be a big reveal at the end where it's like, oh well, Lothric's like that because, okay, here's the thing. When you look at the stuff it said about Aldrich, it says part of Aldrich's plan is he has to consume all of the gods, right? So and then you also have Sullivan's agents in Lothric. Like you've got the Dancer, Vort, and the 3 Outriders who are all in Lothric. So it's like Sullivan is trying to get at something in Lothric, but you never find out what it is. And like clearly he doesn't want to kill Lorien and Lothric because Sullivan's plan hinges on the profaned flame, right? So it shouldn't anyway. Profaned Flame's quite nebulous, but like it shouldn't really matter to Sullivan if the fire fades because Sullivan's got his own like perpetual flame that he's using to control Irithyll. And also like you have Blackhand Gottard showing up as a summon to fight Sullivan. So there is a war between like it's not a very it's just like kind of a behind the scenes kind of Cold War thing between Sullivan and whoever's in charge of Lothric, where they're sending their agents to try to kill each other. So I think maybe it was going to be that like the last god left would be the Nameless King, and he would be an Archdragon Peak, and that's why you had to go find him. Because once Gwendolyn's gone, there's none of the original pantheon of gods left. There's just the descendants. So that might have been like what they were aiming at. That like the Nameless King reveal would like that wouldn't just be an optional boss with like if you read the item descriptions, it's the guy from Dark Souls 1. It could be like it was supposed to be a really big deal.
That would have been
like you would
pretty epic.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, like I was saying, they go through this constant opposition of like Lothric is the sun, Irithyll is the moon. You know, one of them has miracles, one of them has magic. Lothric's up really high, Irithyll's down really low. But then it doesn't really go. It just kind of fizzles out without going anywhere. So I think there's probably a much more interesting like story they had at one point. Yeah. They never went there.
That does seem like it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I've taken up enough of your time, but I do want to ask you, when are you making lore videos?
Well, I went from someone who had too much free time in 2016 to someone who had no free time in 2017. But I have free time again, so I will finish with Bloodborne. I want to finish it by the end of March, because that will be the 3rd anniversary of the game coming out, and I think that's probably long enough to be talking about it.
Awesome.
And when that's done, I have a Dark Souls 2 thing that I am in the middle of working on. That is about that is about the version of Dark Souls 3, the version of Dark Souls 2 that we didn't get because they switched directors halfway through. But I was able to get a text dump of like this early version of the game that listed like it's similar to the Sanadis K stuff where he's just got a giant hunk of text. And I have one of those that pertains to Dark Souls 2 that will list kind of go through that, and it'll explain if you look at it, it kind of explains the original plot of Dark Souls 2, which is not necessarily better, but it's just kind of interesting to look at like what was kept and what was shuffled around and stuff.
Well, that sounds super awesome. Can't wait. Well, again, thank you so much for doing this, and
thank you for asking me.
And you know, I'll bug you on Discord about more stuff in about 5 seconds.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right, I'll see you, man.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.